pause for a second? You want to just tell me when to go? When to start?
Let me do that.
We already have someone. Hey y'all, Stephanie LaToya. Venture Cafe team is lucky to have you. That's some Kyle.
Thank you. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hold on. It is loading on Facebook.
We'll be starting momentarily. So, Aileen, should we get started?
Let me tag you really quickly.
Okay. Should I start singing?
You're good to go.
No, we don't want me to do that. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Van Vark, and no, I am not a singer. I am a small business owner, and welcome to an episode, a very special episode of Talking Business. It's special for a couple of reasons. One, our guest, LaToya Stirrup, but also because it's powered by and in partnership with Venture Cafe, so I have to thank them very much for their support and sponsorship. We wanted to see if we can kind of have this conversation with an audience that's a little bit larger than I'm used to, and excited to have that conversation for sure. A little background about Talking Business. We launched an online stream. We streamed it to Facebook Live right after the pandemic. Just because I have a lot of friends who are small business owners, and we were all just trying to figure it out. So we thought this might be a way for us to engage with small business owners, learn a little bit about what they're doing to pivot and shift during such a trying time, and think, actually that's always what a small business needs to do, is to pivot and shift. So this show is really about the ebbs and flows of small business ownership. So I'll be quiet now and introduce LaToya Stirrup from Kazmaleje. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Thank you so much. We'll start with, who are you and what do you do?
All right. So I am LaToya Stirrup, a Miami girl with a New York state of mind, born and raised in Miami, Coconut Grove to be exact. And I am a full-time entrepreneur. So my background, I have over 16 years of experience in advertising, specifically digital and traditional. Mm-hmm. And in 2013, I decided to step out on my own and become my own CEO, where I was doing consultation, freelance work as a producer project manager. And then I also became president of Digital Grass. We have our show Tech Beats and Bites. And in 2016, I co-founded Kazmaleje with my two sisters to create innovative hair tools and accessories that are made for textured hair.
Okay, great. As I said yesterday, I actually messed up the name, so I apologize. It's Kazmaleje.
No worries.
So I'll start with, how did you come up with the name and the spelling?
Yes. So the spelling is Kazmaleje, and it's actually the phonetic spelling of the word Kazmaleje. So at our business, we're all about creating innovation that's for the everyday goddess, right? So we want to empower our consumers to really tap into the idea of self-care with hair tools and accessories that are not only beautiful to look at, but they work and they really sort of help you to reclaim those moments. So with our hair tools, we're specifically targeting detangling right now. We have a ton of stuff that we want to do, but our first line of hair tools address detangling because that's a major pain point for those of us with natural hair. So it reduces shedding, it cuts your detangling time in half, and it really just makes it a much better experience, which taps into the idea of being an everyday goddess. So that's where Kazmaleje comes in.
Yeah, very nice. You're a serial entrepreneur, so we're going to get to that. But
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by the manufacturing pieces I mentioned to you before. I always feel like people who delve into that are real entrepreneurs because they've got to put skin in the game right up front.
Yeah.
To create this product, this hair tool that you're now going to put into the market. Can you talk a little bit about that process, where the initial investment came from, and what would that expenditure look like if you are going into that realm?
Yeah. So manufacturing is not for the faint of heart because you're not doing it in your kitchen, right? You're not whipping up products.
Man.
It's commitment
right.
on a whole other level. So for us, our journey actually started, like I said, in 2016. Our product did not make it to market until 2019. So there was a ton of behind the scenes work that we had to do. It started out with a 2D sketch that then transformed into a 3D print prototype that we used to test on ourselves to make sure that it worked. Once we saw that our results with our prototype were way better than any other hair tool that we had, that's when we decided to continue to move forward. So at that point, we started to go down the IP process from a legal perspective to protect our idea. We also then started going down the branding idea. Once we had the brand, then we moved into product development and product design. And that's how we have the shape and the look that we have with our hair tools now. So there's a ton of investment that we did for those, 3 years or so. And it was all self-funded. We did not get funding until we started our crowdfunding campaign on iFund Women in June of 2018. So those 30 days is when we started to secure pre-orders. After the end of our campaign, we continued to do pre-orders because we started hitting the circuit in terms of hair expos and different trade shows and things like that. So from June to December, we continued to do that. And then we received some angel investment in the form of a bridge loan that really helped to cover our costs when it came to manufacturing, because we have 3 molds that are really complex, and each mold usually runs for around about between on the low end 7,000 to 15,000 each. So it's a major investment, and it's something that you really need to believe in. And the good thing, right, is that once you have the molds, they're yours, and the production isn't as expensive. So it's a really high upfront cost. But when you're doing your production runs, your unit costs change. So you're able to sort of see the benefits and the break-even analysis come a little bit sooner, depending on what your market strategy is and everything and how that works.
Absolutely. So what about during the pandemic? Have you found that that process has slowed down, maybe because your distribution has changed, sales have changed? Where did you find that fall during that period of time?
No, so we actually this year, we've had 9x year-over-year growth. And a lot of it was very organic because you now have mothers who are home and can't go to the salon. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. I have to do this hair by myself. What do I need? So we saw an uptick just organically from that. And we actually sold out. So one of the things that comes into when you're talking about manufacturing is your production lead time. So we did not, because of course last year was our first year on the market, we don't have the historic data to be able to say how often we need to place orders. We're kind of flexing as we go, and a lot of things are happening. This year, actually last week we launched on HSN as well on air. So there's a lot of movement that's happening for us really quickly at one time. So it's been a really serious growth process. But in terms of the pandemic, we haven't had to pivot per se because we're already selling direct to consumer on our website. We have other online platforms that also carry our hair tools, as well as beauty supply stores and some salons. So the salons and the retail stores, they've had to pivot, but they were already kind of set up anyway. They have websites, so they just close their doors and really focus on their e-commerce.
Okay. And what are some of the retail establishments you're in?
Yeah, so we're on HSN, we're on QVC. Locally, Kinks Miami carries us. All Dolled Up Salons carries us. We're also in My Shade and Texture, which is in Tampa. We're in who else is local? That maybe that's an actual like local establishment. And then we have a ton of other online platforms.
Okay.
We're in different beauty supply stores in California, Marshall, Maine, and Philadelphia. We have a couple in Texas, Louisiana. We're a little bit of everywhere. Atlanta, Floor
Okay.
Plan, which is an awesome beauty concept, and Atlanta carries us. We're in two more in Georgia. We have a lot. We have a whole web page on our website that has our stockist. But it's a beautiful thing, and most of our retail partners are independently owned beauty supply stores that are owned by Black women.
Okay.
And it just speaks to how the industry is changing in terms of Black women now really getting into this space, because we spend a lot of money on our hair and beauty. And now we feel that we need to create those spaces, because we've all heard the stories we've seen on the news where women are going into beauty supply stores and are being treated wrongly because the owners don't reflect the consumers.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's interesting. I had another guest on who's in the beauty industry, and I did a little research and realized that, the natural hair business is a $1.2 trillion business, and it doesn't seem to be losing any steam.
No.
So I'm very glad to know that's organically starting to happen. But do you have any concerns that after the pandemic, we're now working from home? I think 3 ladies were on this before everything started, talking about how we're working from home, so we might not look like this every day. Are you concerned that there are some changes in trends, or in the beauty industry, are you finding there's some changes in trends in that beauty world now that we're kind of quarantined and maybe quarantined for a year?
Yeah, so I would say maybe from like a makeup perspective, but even there, right, you still have to do Zoom calls. So you still need eyeshadow, you still need foundation when you're doing things like this. From a hair perspective, I've actually had a lot of customers reach out because if they were relaxed, they can no longer make those appointments. So they were kind of going natural by default.
Yeah.
So from our perspective, it works, right? We're actually in that sweet spot to where we're providing solutions that work and can continue to be a solution going forward, regardless of how things change, because our hair is our hair. And what we're seeing is that globally, women are embracing their curl patterns more. So whether you are, you have more of the ringlet curls, maybe you're Jewish, or you're biracial, or you're Brazilian, or whatever, there's women across the board who are embracing their curly hair. So what we're looking to do is continue to provide solutions for everyone, because while we designed it with our hair texture in mind, we range from about, for those who are into hair typing, but between the 3 of us, we're between like a 3B to a 4C. So we have a pretty good segment of the hair type spectrum, but our hair tools work for all hair types. So we're still able to provide a solution, and there's more to come. So yeah.
So how did you sort of come to this idea? There are a lot of people, as we've talked about, that are really in this space. They've figured out that this is a market to be in, but primarily from product perspective, not tools.
Yes.
You're kind of the first person I've known, definitely personally, but I've seen who's really gotten into it from that perspective. Why that idea? Why that product, and where did that originate from?
From my own situation. I have hair that likes to kind of clump together. My hair sheds. So detangling, I would always end up with like hair that could fit in both of my hands. And I'm just like, how many more times can I comb my hair before I have none left? And my hair is really thick. So it really just originated from that. And just contemplating it one day, I was like, I use good products. Nothing's wrong with me health-wise. What is it? And we've had this hair texture. This hair texture has been around for millennia. Why are we struggling so to care for it?
Right.
And it just kind of hit me like, what if it's the hair tools? Like, what if this comb that I'm using, this brush that I'm using just really isn't right for my hair? And that's what's causing the ripping and the tugging and the pulling. And that's what we found out once we changed and we started to use our hair tools, because what makes ours unique is that the teeth are shaped like your fingers. So if you remember, there was a point where people were like, I'm not combing my hair anymore, I'm finger detangling. And if you've ever tried it, finger detangling takes a very long time, and it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So it was like, let's change the teeth so that way the teeth work for our hair type. because curly hair is weakest where it bends. So when you think about a traditional comb that has seams, and a seam is basically the parting line that you see, the little like plastic seam that runs through the like the half of the comb,
Mhm.
that kind of acts like a little bit of a razor blade, if you will, when your
Oh,
curl kind of goes across it. So that's where the snapping and you just hear it when it's just sounds like it's raking through your hair when you're combing. So because our teeth are shaped like our fingers and it's smooth, your hair just kind of glides through while still being detangled. So you don't have the same amount of breakage and popping and excessive damage that you would experience with other hair tools. Your hair will always shed. We're not getting rid of that because that's a natural phenomenon. But the excessive breakage that comes with using the wrong tools, that's what we're looking to solve, and that's what we're solving.
so HSN, that's a huge opportunity. That's definitely
Yeah.
been a marketing dream, I'm sure, if I can say that for you.
Yeah.
What has been your method of marketing this product that started from the ground level up again in this industry that's very filled with lots of products
Yeah.
to get to this HSN, and then where from there? How are you going to use this opportunity with HSN to really drive that message home and then
Yeah.
sales?
Absolutely. So a lot of our efforts have truly been organic and very grassroots. We haven't spent a lot of money on like social media ads. I
Mm.
would say going to different like hair shows and getting in front of people helped, of course, and then also applying. How we were able to get into HSN was because last summer they had a competition called the Big Find, where they were looking for new brands to bring on air. So
Mm.
we applied. It was our first year on the market. I was like, let's go for it. See what happens.
See what I mean?
And we were selected. They selected 70 brands out of like a ton of brands that submitted worldwide that they're releasing this year. And it's been a phenomenal ride. And honestly, going back to talking about it being a part of the vision, it literally is in our pitch deck. We had like a trajectory of where we kind of wanted to go in the different phases. And
Mhm.
so we had a phase which was like the retail, like independent beauty supply stores. And then the next phase was like HSN Home Shopping Network, literally.
Oh,
So, and that's where we are, which is really, really cool. So, what we're looking to do next is just continue to build. And we're getting, different people are reaching out to us. We were in 3 issues of Vogue this year. We
very
were
nice.
in House and Garden. So, it's just a lot of being out there, being visible, being seen. And, when you have something that people need,
Mhm.
things happen, right? And when you have something that people love and people literally talk about all the time, it kind of helps to sort of validate your story.
Right.
And you're not looking to do so much. I mean, of course, if we had the budget to do like a major ad campaign, we would. But when you're bootstrapping, you have to be a little bit creative. You have to sort of figure things out. How can you get the biggest bang for your buck?
Mhm.
What makes the most sense in terms of how you sort of promote and build your brand. So yeah.
So is this product patent?
So we're patent pending. We're patent
Okay.
pending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that process? Because you are the first person I've had on this show that has gone through a patent, and I understand it can be a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
So and costly. So how does that work? But worth it. I've
Worth
always
it.
heard
Yeah.
if you're definitely crafting something from, grassroots, you need to do that. So talk a little bit about that process, what that's been
Yeah. So the patent process has been very interesting, especially because we're developing a hair tool.
like. Mhm.
So we've had to go through. So what we did, we applied for a utility patent. And a utility patent speaks to the actual use of it, not so much the design. There's a design patent and then there's a utility patent.
Gotcha.
The strongest one is a utility patent. So that's what we applied for. And what we're going through is sort of like the revisions and reviews is what they call it, where the USPTO kind of comes back to you with feedback on your patent. And then you kind of go back and forth. So that's what we've been going through.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's just a process and it can be expensive. But I will say, to your point, is that if you do have something that is novel and you're looking to build it out, like we want to go global, right? There's
Right.
no ifs, ands, or buts. This is something that we really want to build into a huge, large company. So to
Mhm.
do that, having a patent just allows for one VCs to sort of see that it's something that they can invest in and they can view it as something that is scalable, right? And not, and it also creates a barrier to entry to where someone can't just jump in and replicate your idea.
Okay.
Right. The other aspect of a patent is that sometimes attorneys will tell you that a patent is only as strong as you can control it and defend it, which is absolutely true, right? So if someone does copy you, you can spend a lot of money trying to stop them from doing what they're doing and defend your patent. But at least if you have one, there is some level of protection around that. So because, and we have patent pending on our website, we have it on our packaging, so that way people know, listen,
Before
don't
you
try
get into this game,
don't try it.
I want you to know what's happening.
There's a lot of time and money in this thing. Don't try it.
So, but if you'd gone for the design patent, that actually would have required you to do that for every one of your molds. Is that true? Or is that how I understand it?
I believe so. We didn't look into the design patent because we actually did start our patent process very early in the game. And that's also part of the reason why we've had to go back and forth a little bit, because our original drawings were based on the original sort of sketch and not the final product. So we've had to kind of go back and forth a little bit because we did some design modifications to it. But we wanted to do the utility just because it protected the concept and the use and not just the look.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So to go back to manufacturing a little bit, have you reached out to a manufacturer that's creating this product for you? And is the ultimate goal to sort of ultimately bring that in-house?
Yeah, so that would be fantastic to have a facility where we just researching and designing stuff and then send it downstairs to get built. But yeah, so what we did was, to give you a little bit more of our process, we actually used a company in Miami called Prototype House to do our product design. Once we had our final CAD files, we took those to a manufacturer. We have a manufacturing partner in California, and they have sister factories in China. So because of cost and everything else, we had to go to China to manufacture. So our products are shipped to us from China. And, when you think about that and just the whole COVID-19 thing, and a lot of things have happened, there are some barriers there when you're talking about manufacturing overseas, because you can't quite control a lot of it. And that's something to think about if you're looking to get into manufacturing, just because of how much the world has changed. You really need to think logistically and like, what does that mean? When we did it before, it was because convenience, price, and there weren't the same level of I wouldn't say barriers, but things are just different now. COVID-19 has changed things to where shipping is way more expensive because everybody's trying to get product out. China's still a bit on like a lag because they're trying to catch up because they had tons of orders that they could not fill before. So it creates a bit of a bottleneck. We saw it. Everything was being made in China. And everyone was like, I just can't fulfill because China's not producing right now. So thinking about that, how can you do some risk mitigation when you're talking about manufacturing? Because right now, manufacturing in the US is still very expensive. So when you're talking about your unit costs and your margins, you have to sort of think about that. We would love to manufacture in the US, to be able to go right here to a factory in Miami, be like, hey, where's our products? Right. Ready. But that hasn't been the case. We haven't found a factory in the US that will be able to hit our unit costs that can still maintain our margins.
Okay. So now let's talk about operations a little bit. I'm sure things have shifted a little bit there. What changes have you found operationally that you've had to make? I know you sort of said that you've not had to pivot in terms of how you are getting the product out there, but have you had to make some changes internally as a result of what's been going on with the pandemic, or were these changes already en route?
Yeah, so going back to the manufacturing, so looking at other places to manufacture, because we really hit some major snags earlier in the year. So example, there's also a thing called the Lunar New Year that happens where China completely shuts down for about 6 weeks. So we were trying to have our product delivered before they hit Lunar New Year, but some things happened they couldn't fulfill. So we had to wait until the Lunar New Year ended for them to then open up. But COVID-19 hit. So then that added a whole another
Right.
like
It's a
4 weeks.
challenge.
And it was like, geez. And we were trying to fulfill the order for HSN. So things just kept moving back. So because of that, that's also what kind of like spawned it. Was like, we can't be in this situation going forward. If things are going to continue to scale and grow at this pace, we really have to start thinking now about that and putting those items and that process in place to kind of help control that a little bit better, so that way we're not completely like shackled to something and we're like, we can't do anything, sorry. Like, that's just, you can miss out on way too many opportunities. Luckily, they were completely open and they were working with us because the whole world was kind of going through it at the same time. But just think about it, if it had only been us, if it had just been a snafu,
Absolutely.
everything else is working and we're like, we can't produce anything for another 8 weeks. Like, that's just not the situation that we want to be in. So that's a really good example of how our operations are literally in the process of changing. We're working through some of that right now to see where we can move manufacturing to.
Okay. You work with your sisters, I believe.
Mhm.
Your partners in this effort.
Yes.
We've had a couple of husband-wife partnerships here, but never siblings. So you're
Uh-huh.
first, really, for a lot of things for me. Um,
Yay!
so how have you crafted? Who's responsible for what? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
And have you had those intentional conversations about who's responsible for what? And how do you work through those challenges where you're not quite in agreement with what the next step should be?
Yeah. So we honestly kind of play to each other's strengths.
Mhm.
So, for instance, my background is production project management. So I kind of handle all of the manufacturing, retail partners, all of the process related things. My sister Latasha, she actually has her license in cosmetology, but she also dabbles in like graphic design. And she also has her background in advertising as well. So she kind of does like all of our in-house marketing, all
Mhm.
of our like t-shirt designs. She does those, our flyers, our thank you cards. She designs those and she handles the print and everything for those. And then my youngest sister, Latrice, she has some nonprofit background. She's done event management and sort of like an admin role as well in some of the organizations that she's been in. So really kind of logistics and coordination. So she handles our shipping and logistics. So orders that get fulfilled, everything like that. So that's how we've kind of divided it up. And it really just allows us to sort of do what we're all best at. And it works. Yeah, it
You
works.
find that you have
It makes it easy.
where your button heads, and then how do you stop, not take it to the family reunion, the Sunday dinner? That can be tricky.
Yeah, wait, I missed the first part. You were breaking up. I missed the first part. I heard the second part, but I missed the first
I
part.
was wondering if, do you find that you have some challenges and, disagreements where you're not quite on the same page of what you'd like to see happen with the business? And if so, who's the final decider? How have you crafted that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, again, how do you keep it out of the family dynamic?
Yeah, no. So, it's hard to kind of draw a line between business and family because you are siblings. So sometimes a lot of your sibling relationship comes into the business, but it's just all about kind of remembering and really sort of anchoring into your why and why you're doing it in the first place and not getting personal with it. It's a work in progress, right? Certain things may come up and it may not work out, but then it's all about the communication, just really kind of having a conversation about it. Sometimes you may have to apologize and it's okay. It's okay.
Love you.
Because, the little snapping and the sibling dynamic can definitely enter into it, but you have to sort of really tie back into why you're doing what you're doing and understand that it is a business, right? And that you are working towards a common goal. So you got to put your big girl panties on sometime and just hammer it out and get the job done.
Exactly. So did you apply for any of the loans and the EDLE? There was every grant imaginable out there.
Yeah.
How was that process for you? Was it easy or?
Yeah, so we did apply for like the PPP and the EIDL. We received the EIDL, not the PPP, and part of that is because through Kazmaleje, at least, we don't pay ourselves. So because we're not employees, it's a different situation, right? Both of my sisters, they still work full time, and I have a myriad of things that I do. So that dynamic of being an employee, because that's what you saw on all the applications, like how many employees do you have, including yourself and everything like that. So that particular situation, you know, because right now we've just been reinvesting in the business. Whatever comes in, we put it back in for inventory or whatever needs to happen. So that kind of cut us out of some of the formal loan applications. What we have received, though, say it again.
Are you rethinking that now that maybe you should pay yourself something? So you
Well, yeah. No, I mean, listen, as the revenue come in,
get a dollar. I'm gonna get $1 out of it. So I have to.
Right, right. You know, definitely want to become full time in the business. But you know, you have to get to a certain point to where you can afford to pay yourself through the business, and you don't want to sacrifice the business just to give yourself a paycheck, right? So you have to sort of, that's where the whole idea of, like, for instance, I was talking to another entrepreneur friend, and she babysits for a living, so that way she can do her business. And so you really have to get that side hustle on, because you don't want to, you know, every dollar that comes in, you putting it into your checking account, because then what's the business going to do? You're going to have to put it right back to buy stuff. So yeah, so no, definitely that's the plan. Once we get to that level to where we can afford ourselves as a salary, absolutely, that's what we will be doing.
Okay. So let me see. I know there's another question. I want to get a little personal for a second.
Yeah.
You're a mother and
I
an
am.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? That's a whole nother job, right?
Listen, support. Cannot say it any other way. Support. Parents, to my cousins, to my significant other, who is his daddy, of course, we're just not married. But yeah, no, listen, it's all support, right? So as I'm up here right now, he's downstairs with my parents, probably eating ice cream and doing who knows
I'm
what.
worried about you right now.
No, he is a busy, completely, you know, just into everything 3-year-old. And sometimes he'll make a cameo on a conference call, and you just have to allow grace for those moments. You can't get all tied up and worked up about, listen, it is what it is. And a lot of times people enjoy it because it kind of breaks up the moment and the energy of what's going on right now to kind of have kids around. So I embrace it. It was, and honestly, so we incorporated Kazmaleje in 2016. He was born that fall. So I literally was like trying to get things done before he was born. Then I had to take a little bit of time, gave myself some grace because I wasn't necessarily moving as fast as I wanted to. But I had to have a moment where I was like, because, you know, sometimes, especially we as women, we will compartmentalize things like this is my job, this is my personal life. And I had to have a whole moment with myself where I was like, pause, you're being way too hard on yourself. You're a mom, you're doing 1,000 things at one time. Like, give yourself that grace and acknowledge what you've been able to accomplish with everything going on, and realize that you are a whole person. You're not these bits and pieces. Everything is a part of who you are. So you really have to embrace that. And it gives you a way more freedom when you sort of realize that, because you're not trying to corner things off from each other. You gotta realize, you gotta be holistic about your approach, especially in entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is a completely personal experience. Like, you will go through it.
Absolutely.
On a very personal level.
Ironically, I think during this time, that conversation I hear coming up a lot, where people are sort of forgiving themselves a lot for perfections and imperfections. You're right. Kids are showing up in the background. Everybody's like, hey, tell them I say hey, and let's keep talking. So do you feel like that's going to really change the game in this entrepreneurship space of being, especially like you said, women, for being able to forgive themselves and being all they can be? And really feel okay with it and know they've got a support system out there in the world as well.
No, I definitely think so. I think that this moment was about healing on so many different levels. And it really sort of made people sit with themselves, those who don't tend to do that on a regular basis, to really just sit with themselves and acknowledge who they are and really tap into those aspects of themselves that need to be healed. And sometimes there's some really deep-rooted sort of thoughts and thought patterns that are breaking right now because you're forced to sort of see yourself every day, especially if you're by yourself, right? If you're not, you don't have a family that you live with or anything like that, you're really sort of spending some time. So I think that things will definitely be different in the future. And just thinking about how the workplace is going to be different, right? Some people are not even going back to their office anymore because it's like, I can do this stuff from home, and your whole day changes, right? The whole 9 to 5 concept. I've been off of 9 to 5 for like years, and I'm just like, it's stupid. Like it doesn't have to be that way, right? You can sort of create your own flow. You could kind of wake up at a certain time, do what you need to do, take a break, do it again. You can do sprints throughout the day. You can have blocks throughout the day. There are better ways.
And the expense of going 9 to 5 too.
Listen,
traffic, gas,
lunch,
lunch, you name it. Wearing makeup every day. Is huge. Childcare. So I agree. I think it's going to completely change the game in the workforce for sure.
Yeah.
Now let's expand that conversation around time. I talked a little bit about being a mother, but you're sort of a jack of all trades. You're a serial entrepreneur. How do you manage it all? How do you keep it all on your Google Calendar without making yourself crazy?
Listen, so look right here is my planner. So this is like not a pocket planner, but I can show you, right? So it's not a ton of space. And some people are like, oh my gosh, how can you use that for your planner? And it's more so to keep track of like high level things that need to get done. My email has the details and all that kind of stuff. But because, especially when you become a mom, like there's other thoughts that come to you throughout the day. And I just may write down like call so-and-so tomorrow or do whatever. And then for my day, I have certain times to do certain things. So I may block the morning from like 10 to 12 for X, do lunch, play with him a little bit, make sure he watches something educational on Netflix, and then pick it back up in the afternoon. So I do day blocking. I have a planner, and I find it very helpful to write things down. I'm a completely digital girl. Don't get it twisted. But there's a therapeutic aspect of having pen to paper and writing your stuff down, being able to track it, go back to what you could have accomplished, as well as seeing what you need to do next week. So I'm a strong believer in having somewhat of a planner. I have a notebook too. I started doing notebooks again where I keep my notes from my calls. And it's right. It's just really sort of, and again, because I was a PM for so many years, the idea of managing multiple things at the same time with multiple teams, I do it kind of naturally. So this isn't far from that. Instead of managing other people's projects, I'm managing my own projects now.
Okay. So income, we talked a little bit about, you still are working. So are your sisters full-time, which is great, but have you included in your time frame or worked out how that scheduling will happen in being able to figure out when it's time to turn on the Kazmaleje hat and when it's time to be at work?
Yeah, so for them, it's a little bit different, right? Because they have full-time jobs. I don't. I have projects where I'm either like consulting with somebody, or I'm maybe coaching somebody, or I'm doing freelance PM work. So for me, it's a little bit different because those things are way more fluid and I can schedule them to my own needs. So for me, Kazmaleje still takes up the majority of my time, and I insert things in based on other projects that I may have going on. So my day looks different from theirs. I have way more flexibility. So my Tuesday will look completely different than my Wednesday, than my Thursday, and my Friday. And that's where the planner comes in, because I may know that I have a ton of Kazmaleje calls on Tuesday. So let me block time for myself to do X done for this project on Wednesday. So it's really a week to week, day to day sort of a thing, but I have at a very high level what needs to be accomplished, which is where the project timeline kind of comes in, right? So when you think about a timeline, it's only as good as you keep it up. Absolutely. And it's going to continue to flex and move as you go along, which again just speaks back to the idea of grace and just really being open to the idea of fluidity, especially now. Things are just so different. So you have to be fluid. The more that you try to be rigid, it's going to break you down and it's going to cause you to be fluid. So I just allow time for that. And I may have a day where I'm just like, I just can't today. We're just going to sit outside and I just need to take a break. I may need to go get a massage. I have those days, and it's
You
okay.
know,
And I will pick it back up tomorrow.
I need a
You know what I
meal.
mean? So,
You're not espresso, you all right. You can do that. You can do that. And thanks
right.
for saying that, because then I don't feel guilty when I do that. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit because I got
Yes.
all of your business with regards to the manufacturing Kazmaleje. You
Yes.
are also a co-founder of Digital Grass. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about that? And I believe Digital Grass is behind Text Bites and Beats. So
Yep. Tech beats and
let
bites.
us a little bit. Text Beats and Bites. Text
Yeah.
Beats. See, that's tricky.
Tech beats and bites.
Right. Okay. Tell us a little bit about that as well, and then a little bit how serial entrepreneurship is. How does that work, and how does that feel, and is
Yeah.
that DNA? I feel like at that point, entrepreneurship is your DNA. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll start from the back and then work back to tech beats and bites. So absolutely, to a certain extent, I would definitely say that entrepreneurship is in my DNA. And it's funny because so on my dad's side, on the Stirrup side of my family, of like my entire generation of cousins were all like entrepreneurs.
hmm.
And I was talking to one of my cousins one day and I was like, where's this come from? Like I just have a ton of ideas and all this stuff must happen at once. And once we sort of looked at it, right, because my great grandfather, E.W. Franklin Stirrup, he's one of the pioneers of Coconut Grove.
Okay.
So we've always known him as real estate, right? But once we've had more conversations within the family and did a lot more sort of dialogue and researching, which we knew. So I'm giving you a conversation that happened years ago, but it sort of shined the light a little bit on sort of who we are and how we act. He had multiple businesses. So not only was he developing real estate in Coconut Grove for Bahamian immigrants, as well as those who were coming from the Carolinas to work in the resorts and things that were happening in Coconut Grove, which predates Miami City, the city of Miami. He also had a horse and buggy business.
Oh,
He had a general store. And him and my great grandmother, they would like work during the day and build houses at night by hand.
wow.
So that was who he is and who he was, right? So when you sort of think about that, and it's like, okay, well, this is where that kind of comes from because we are
Hand it down.
aspects of our ancestors.
Absolutely.
So just completely tapped into that. And I was like, okay, it's not so crazy anymore. I embrace that aspect of myself. So yes, no, I completely agree that there are aspects of it. But does that mean that you're born an entrepreneur? No, because for me, I can tell you my whole plan was, especially coming out of college, was to like go work at a huge ad agency, which I did in New York, and like climb the corporate ladder and become like a C-suite executive. Listen, that's not
Didn't
my
work out
path.
like that.
Right, that's not my path. I was like, I don't think I want that anymore. I think I'm gonna be over here. So yeah, I don't have those stories where I was like selling lemonade at the age of 5. Like that's not who I was. Like I used to hate like when they used to give you the little like the like Christmas stuff to like sell to raise money for the school. I used to hate that.
Me
Like I was like,
too.
here mom, take that to your job.
Take it to your job. Let them sign
Right.
up for it.
And just
They'll
come
do
back
some
and we
Girl
can win the
Scout
prize. Right. I hated that stuff. And that's something else too that we can maybe talk about is the idea of selling and sales. Because there was some healing, I will say, that I had to do there too, because the idea of sales is something that I think we as a public just kind of look down on, right? You think about the used car salesman, you
Mhm.
sort of think about sales as being very sleazy. So the idea of pushing and promoting your stuff just feels
Mhm.
pushy and very aggressive. And so I had to do some sort of healing there too, to really sort of be like, I'm not a used car salesman. I have a product that's solving a solution and I need to let people know about it. So
Mhm.
kind of breaking out of that idea of what sales looks like and not trying to be the humble creator, like, oh yeah, just come to me, let you see
Right.
my stuff. You're not gonna make money that way.
Yeah.
So, there's some things that have to happen there. But going to your second question about digital grass. Digital grass honestly started from a conversation I know I had with Mike, and I think Mike had with some other people, just about the ecosystem.
Michael Hall, by the way.
Yes, Michael Hall.
And we'll have him on the show as well. So, okay.
Yeah. So we were just talking about the ecosystem in South Florida at that time. So this was like 2012. I think Lab Miami had maybe just started to open up, and we just used to see ourselves at these events, and we were like, this has to be like other people who feel this way, who want this information, this content. So Digital Grass started out as a collective of entrepreneurs who decided to come together to begin to create space and information and workshops for other Black, Brown, LGBTQ business owners who were looking to get into tech, but may not have had the services to do so, right? So we were looking to augment them with either our services, because I have the background in like production, project management, advertising. Mike and Dante, they have the graphic design, website design. We had PR, we had legal. So we were able to kind of like surround the creator with services that then spoke to their needs and allowed them to do what they were good at, which was, if they were a developer, developing their app.
Mhm.
So that's sort of where Digital Grass started. And then over the years, we just began to shift and pivot and figure out what made the most sense. And we kind of ended up at a place where it became about content creation and telling the stories, giving the information through podcasting and our show on Facebook that we stream on Facebook called Tech Beats and Bites. So that's sort of where we pivoted to. Now we're opening up different co-working spaces that will have different resources and classes. So we're kind of bringing it back to where we started, but in a very different way. So that's a bit of the story about Digital Grass, which we could have a whole other show on too.
I was about to say, I was like, that's a whole other show. And actually, I was also thinking a whole nother show on that healing, to forgive yourself.
Yeah. Listen, you can have me back.
Because I struggle with that sales healing part too. So
Yeah.
it's my challenge, and we may have to help each other through that.
Yeah.
So before we go, I really want to ask you how we can get in touch with you. Or find Kazmaleje, find Digital Grass, and any other way that we can get in touch with you. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. So I would say the easiest way would be to probably go to my website, which is LaToyaStirrup.com. And on there, I have information about Kazmaleje. I have information about Tech Beats and Bites. So that can be sort of your launch pad to go to whichever direction that you want to go into. And as I mentioned, I do consulting and coaching work as well, especially for women who are looking to produce their own products. So I have some clients right now that I'm coaching with who are developing and they're trying to get into manufacturing. So I'm walking them through the process, because manufacturing, especially if you have an idea, first of all, if you have an idea, it can feel very big. And I take a very tech forward producer approach to my business, and I break it down into steps and phases. Okay. So it doesn't feel so big and so daunting if I'm doing one thing at a time. Right. And I'm building up to what I have and to where I'm trying to be. So I take my clients through that process, which helps them to kind of like, kind of put a little bit of the anxiety to the side and really just focus on what needs to happen right here, right now, and not what needs to happen 30 steps from now. Right, exactly. Well, actually, that was going to be my last question, but I just saw I have another. Emergency plans. That's something that nonprofits have been really good at, having an emergency plan. That's not something for-profits have been very good at. Especially in this area, we've only thought pretty much a week out because of hurricanes. Pandemics have changed that. Yeah. I mean, hopefully we won't go through this again, but did you have an emergency plan before the pandemic? And now are you actively pursuing making sure you have an emergency plan in the future? Yeah, no, going back to the conversation, just from supply chain, right? So what are the options there? How can we ensure that if something were to happen, we can keep things rolling, right? So we're still a small business. We're an indie brand. Can we pivot and still supply? Like even the big boys had issues, right? Clorox was sold out. And they were like, give us about 30 days to give you Clorox wipes. So you need thank you for our stock prices going up, but we need about 30 days to manufacture some Clorox wipes, right? So even on that level, they have supply chain issues. And I think with us being a small brand, we're still limited because we don't necessarily have the budget to be able to have multiple factories that can do redundancy. But to have that in mind to where we need to be and where we need to go, to at least maybe have 2 factories that we can be like, okay, you can't do it. Let's pivot over here, get it going, let's get it out, right? And then from a perspective of employees, we're not there yet, right? Like I said, we don't have employees right now. We do want to have employees. So of course, that idea of having plans in place for that, even thinking about digitally, right? We saw, what was that last week? where Verizon, T-Mobile were like, up, no service for you today. So just thinking about that as well. Right?
I
What does
think I
that
was
mean
doing a
for
show that
communication?
day. I think I was doing a show that day. I was like, man, you're killing me. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, right. So we have a hot spot, right? So you
Exactly.
just have to have some of those things in place when you're sort of thinking about the fundamental aspects of your business. What do you need to keep making money? Really sort of have backup plans for those things. So yeah, no, we're actively working on that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to join us. That was a wealth of
Absolutely.
information. And as I mentioned, manufacturing, I'm always intrigued by. I don't have the guts to do it, but I'm just saying.
Come
I
on over. Come on over.
no. But yeah, definitely. I think those who do it, it's a gutsy move, 100%. So thank you
Yeah.
for that feedback, and I really encourage anyone who's in the manufacturing game contact her. She'll definitely be a wealth of information. Thank you, everyone who did chime in. Again, I learned a lot. We didn't see any questions. A lot of people just saying hello, but thank you for joining us. This show, as I mentioned, has been going on now for quite some time. So I'd like to ask you if you would continue to watch future guests. This show actually will end up on YouTube, so you'll be able to go back to it time and time again. You could check us out at Just Talking Business. That's on Facebook. We also have a channel that we're starting on YouTube, but you can see the shows now under Stephanie Creates. So please check it out and tune in. Check in if you know any businesses that want to be interviewed and we can get more information. Thank you for letting us know how to get Venture Cafe, for announcing that for me in the chat. But yes, we will be around and we definitely look forward to doing this again. And I'd also like to thank Venture Cafe for being a great partner and immediately welcoming us to do this with during your Venture Cafe Thursday gathering. So thanks again. Thanks, LaToya. I will see
Thank you.
everyone soon. Have a good one. Thanks so much. Thank you, Eileen.